Lori, we're now looking at your art quilts, and the thing that is immediately striking is that they are not a traditional massive quilt. So I wonder if you can tell us about this piece, Birch Forest, the technique that you're using, etc. But also maybe if you would speak to the size of the thing, how you are making art quilts your own.
You ask such hard questions. Sewing is something that I've done since I was a kid. I made clothes for myself. I got into doing alterations through some dry cleaners. I got to a point where I could make any piece of clothing fit almost any body. And probably about 10 years ago, I joined this little art quilt group where there's these women that this is all they do. And some of them are incredibly good at it. And I learned from one of them how to do confetti quilting. That's what this one is here. You cut the fabrics, different solid colors, into tiny little pieces, and you sprinkle it sort of like confetti, but with intention, obviously. And there are a few other pieces, like the tree trunks you put in with a solid thing. And these, the features on the aspens here are, those are done with the machine, the stitching on the machine to create the shading. Then it has a sheet of, just a real thin layer of tulle over it that holds the pieces down. And then you just quilt the entire thing to hold them in place. This was my first confetti quilt that I actually did in the class where I learned how to do it. And of course it's tree themed because that's what I do. And then one time in the art quilt group, the assignment was spring, and so I did a spring thunderstorm. And being that I like dimension and texture, I made some little flowers to put on there. But I had these scraps of just this weird little stuff. Somebody had cut it into tiny little pieces, and so I created the rain with that. And I just, this is the same thing. Being in that group was really a good stretch for me because I had to learn different quilting techniques, which I had not done very much of prior to that. So it was, everything is a process, a learning process. As long as you're learning, you're growing. Right?
As you're speaking, and as I'm able to scan the wall, and in particular these two pieces, I wonder if you could just extend this conversation a little bit and discuss color. Because to my mind, as I look at your work, it's quite vibrant, and yet to my eye, your use of color, even in spring thunderstorm, almost seems a bit muted. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, actually, that's an interesting observation because I've noticed that myself. It's not intentional. It's not intentional. That's just kind of how I do. I think it comes from wanting everything to look very real. So I try to use the real colors. For some reason, I've noticed this in my painting. It's like black must scare me because I don't do really harsh blacks. I have to really work to get that in there. So to see something like this, that was hard for me.
And yet you're asking
but it works.
us, you're inviting our eye to inhabit that quilt in a way that a shocking use of color may not. To my mind, this is a nice example of you articulating that really near-range, detail-oriented work that you discussed in our general discussion.
You know, I do that. I've noticed that in my mural work too. The backgrounds can be a little bit more vague and muted, but to bring things forward I just let myself get carried away with the detail and just put lots of detail in there because that adds that third dimension
Yeah.
to the two-dimensional piece.
Yeah. Oh, I like it so much. Thank you.